This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to this webinar about how you can use big data and AI to optimize, transform, or disrupt, and hopefully end up with an artificial intelligence in your company, which is boosting your business and not just degrading it. So I put together a little agenda for us, which looks like this. So market leaders are actually becoming data-driven. So, and I'm not just talking about Netflix or YouTube or Google. It's your neighbor. So there's a lot of success stories out there. I'm also going to be talking about big data in 2020 because it's been around for quite some time. And as computation and mail and other technologies, it actually changed a bit. So I'm going to be talking about how we can grasp the opportunities and really get the benefits from the 2020 version and on version of big data. I'm going to go through to the 3 different use cases. And again, it's not going to be Netflix. It's going to be companies you know as your neighbor, possibly. And then I'm going to shed some light on which lessons we learned, how you actually work with these projects in order for it to become successful for your business. Just to remind you, this is the first webinar in our big data series. This will focus more on the how to start and the bigger picture and what you do in order to succeed in the big picture. And we will have even more detailed and technical webinars later. And last but not least, well, I'm going to just touch upon our service portfolio so we know what you can actually buy from us if you should be interested in that as well. So let's kick you off with setting the scene. Now, about 80% of executives, they actually agree that, if they don't tackle big data, if they don't do AI, they're most likely not going to succeed as much as they could as a business. So they could have the Kodak moment, they could lose their competitive position, and they could even face extinction. So there's a huge focus on big data and AI on the executive level. Now, a lot of these companies, they're trying to hire new people. And some companies, they're giving these AI projects to business units or wizards, really smart people for sure. And that is fine. But it comes very dependent on that single unit or that single person. And it often can turn to an IT project instead of an actual business transformation project. So with that in mind, what the analysts are saying is that they're saying between 60 and 85% of the big data projects, they actually fail. And for many different reasons. They go over the timeline, they can exceed the budget, it doesn't deliver as expected. And sometimes, what you thought was a really good idea coming from a data scientist or your brilliant innovation engineer, yes, more beer. When you start using the service, you end up with beer all over your sweater. So it doesn't really work the way you thought it would. Then again, you can't operationalize it for your business. However, of the ones that actually succeed with their big data and AI strategy, they are much more likely to acquire customers, right? So they're more attractive for new generation of customers and also for their current customers. So they also retain their customers way more effectively than companies that don't have this in place. And they're much more likely to be profitable because they can optimize their supply chain and they can also get way, way closer to the customers because they understand their customers better. So it's no doubt that these are very attractive for C-levels and executives. So if you have a big data and AI idea that can enhance your business, you are most likely going to get funded for that. However, big data has gone through the evolution just like other types of services, and we do deliver applications very different today. Looking at Netflix, okay, here it comes, Netflix, comparing to how applications were presented 30 years ago using Unix, okay? And it's the same for big data. Now, big data is actually was introduced more, the word was introduced in 2005, and we have had our way with it ever since. What big data means today is more on the AI side. And when you work with AI and you're going to make artificial intelligence actually work, you have to gather every sort of data you can get your hands on in order to have an artificial intelligence that actually works, that can be smart. And when you end up with gathering that much of data, much more data than you did in the previous generations, you're going to have a bit of challenges with governance. So you're going to have to divide on data producers and data consumers. And just as you monitor your services today, you would like to monitor your data pipelines so they are compliant, so they are within governance, because data are legal, they are bound by legal entities, and you want to be compliant, and you also want the consumers to consume the data that they actually have the rights to consume. So there's a whole new field of IT coming into the market, and it's a bit different than what we've done in the past. It's also way more intrusive than before. So when we go into self-driving buses or surgery by robots, this is very intrusive into the society. So there are a whole movement of AI-driven services, AI path, AI governance, AI ethics, which is going to be a big player in the future. And you should position yourself for this as soon as possible so you can be part of, still be a market leader or still be a successful business. And actual AI, it doesn't always require a huge amount of data, but there's still a certain complexity to it. And what you're looking for is your AI to be wise, not just shoving you information. So it usually requires a large amount of data. So you go way outside of the data warehouse. You'll look for social media data. You'll look for sensor data. You look for insecure data. You look for data that is just rumors. And in order to correlate this and actually make this usable for AI, you usually require a lot of compute capacity. So the hyperscaler compute capacity, it is very attractive here, and it's also driving the big data market and the adoption into the market. So on just to underpin that point with numbers, before we go into the success stories and the use cases, approximately in 2022, the big data market, AI market, is going to be as big as the hyperscaler public cloud market, more or less. And there is a huge adoption using these hyperscaler services for big data. And the trend is that it's growing more than doing Hadoop in your own on-premise data center. So that's the trend. Now, we have done this journey with some customers. And again, it's not Airbnb, Google, and Uber that we all know have great success with data. These are more a bit different examples. So we work with a company called SKF, which deliver clean energy, windmills, clean as you get, even though there are some controversy around it. Now, to ease on that controversy, they used to place these windmills in places that are very remote, so they don't do visual pollution in cities or places where people live, right? So the challenge with these particular windmills is that when they break out, you have to send a ship, you have to check what's going on, and then you have to go back, you have to get the parts, and there's quite some cost relating to actually fix these guys when they break down. So what they had done, they had put some sensors inside the windmills, and our task was to try to predict whenever it was about to break, then we could optimize the supply chain so we could actually predict when it breaks and then optimize supply chain and fix it before it breaks, or write down when it breaks and have all that supply chain ready to fix that particular windmill. Now, we have a lot of data inside the windmill. What we didn't have was the data outside the windmill. So actually the first machine learning model, they completely crashed, because we had forgotten that, there's a lot of sounds coming in on top of the windmills, and seagulls, they really like dancing the tango on the top of the windmill. Sometimes they even fly into the windmill, and they will produce a sound that can be mistaken for a mechanical error. So what we had to do here, we had to gather all the data inside the windmill, all the data outside the windmill, taking in consideration that there were birds, fish, sounds from the sea, air, and other things. We fixed the machine learning model, and we could actually predict the breakdown within 2 weeks precision. So what we did here was actually educating a neural network to understand the sounds of when is a windmill going to break down. So it just proves as an example, the data in your data warehouse, it's not going to be enough. The data in your box, it's not going to be enough if you want to have smart decision support and using AI and algorithms to do that. You have to look way broader. Another project that we have recently engaged in, it's Avinor. And as you may know, airport security, it's sort of a big thing. So they have these huge, complex, big fences around the airports. And they have to inspect those. And that's a continuous process, right? However, it's being done manually. Now, their hypothesis was that if we fly drones through these fences or over the fences, not through the fences, if we gather the data from the drones and feed that to a machine learning model, we can visualize the results and we can actually understand if the airport is secure. So what we did together with Avinor in one airport for now is to do that project, and we replaced the manual monitoring process with drones and AI. And not only did we reduce the costs on that particular business process, we also increased the quality of it, because it's now a continuous process that we can do more often than sending people walking around the fence and looking for security breaches. And the next step here is, of course, to make these drones fully self-flying, automating, and really cut the cost even further and make it even more automated. So I guess we all know BMW. This is a project that we did in Germany. And as you may know, BMW, they are known for being the ultimate driving machine. They have a certain touch and feel, the slam in the door, right? And BMW's challenge these days, especially here in the Nordics, is that they're facing competition from other car vendors that they never thought they would compete with. So they are competing with Nissan, they're competing with Mitsubishi, right? That has a different brand perception. And that is because of the electrification of cars, which is huge here, especially here in the Nordics. So what BMW was setting out for, there were two things. Number one, optimize the current supply chain. And secondly, make new digital services that can enable them to get new customers, new generation of customers. Because what if they could give away the car and they can earn more money on the top of the car on digital services? So I'm not saying that they will give away the car, but what if they could do that? That would sort of change their business model, and it will enable them in a very different competitive situation. So what we did together with BMW, we brought in our data leadership model, our data process model. We worked with them on the use cases, and we ended up defining some use cases. After we had done that and specified those, the vision and the challenges, been very concrete on that, we set up the data lake and we started to harvest the data from a lot of different receptors. It can be receptors in the car, it can be receptors all other places, it can be data from the CRM, it can be social media data, it can be GPS data, a lot of different things that we can use both to optimize the supply chain and for them to feed their business development. And hopefully for BMW, that will enable them to have the same touch and feel as the ultimate driving machine, also on the digital services in the future. So I'm looking forward to consume that whenever it comes out. So we did a lot of projects and we have some lessons learned. So I'm going to go through those, share those with you, and share with you which steps do we take with the customers to enable them to succeed more and not be part of the negative statistics for big data. So number one, pick your vision. If your vision is to be the most nutritious food in the world, if you're a restaurant if you provide food, if you are a restaurant owner, and your vision is to be providing the most nutrient food, stick to that, and be really true to that vision. And then you choose one single challenge to solve. And that could be many things. It could be one specific business challenge. It could be to optimize your supply chain. It could be to reduce cost on one single thing. It could be to replace a manual process. It could be to change materials. When you have done that, you articulate that to your whole organization and be very careful with it and have executive sponsorship. Because the situation you're going to find yourself in, if you are able to get the success, is that you may even disrupt your own company, or you will definitely go across your business units, and you may even, start a lot of discussions and fuss inside the company because you are actually breaking a lot of this governance you already have in place. So you are setting out to do something visionary. You're setting really out to be a game changer. So make sure you have that executive sponsorship because it's going to help you later. Now, when you pick a business challenge to solve, again, it may be a bit scary. Don't limit yourself to the data that you can gather. So if you can gather the color on the woman's tongue, it might be useful for you. Now, the way you put governance in this is that you should differ on the consumer part and on the producer part, and make sure that you have the compliance in place so we can actually use that data for later. But in theory, gather all the data you can and then put governance in place so you can make it usable. And the same goes if you're going to try to optimize your supply chain. Gather the GPS data, gather the weather if you think it has something to do with how trucks drive on the road. Gather stream data from sea streams if you are using trams, if you're using boats or ferries. Gather GPS data from the sellers, all you can get your hands on, and then you put your governance in place in order to move forward. And you should monitor your data just the way you do your services. So the data pipeline monitoring, it sort of enables you to have part of this in place. And here's the crucial part. Don't give it to one person. Don't give it to just one business unit. If you really want to extract the value from your AI project, establish a cross-functional delivery team where you have the business represented and you have the DevOps and the data ops. You have a user expert. You have a network architect. You have a cloud specialist. You have a data scientist, and you have a data engineer. And what you're going to do with this team is actually tackling very complex problems. And the problems can seem quite trivial, but it might be like, you don't have access to all the data in the data warehouse, so we can't use all of it. Or it might be that your network is segregated, so you can't actually access everything you need other places. It might be that you need some infrastructure to run this on, so you need a cloud infrastructure specialist in there, and you definitely need a business owner to understand if this is a good business idea. So there's a lot of these little internal obstacles that you're going to have to surpass, and that cross-functional team, it will enable you to move much faster forward than shoveling tickets and doing all this internal fighting. And the technology landscape, it is rather complex, just like in public cloud or if you're setting out on a hyperscaler journey. The technology landscape is also very complex on big data. And we're not just talking about Hadoop. There are hundreds and thousands of PaaS and SaaS services out there, and a lot of these is moving also into AI. So we can buy sort of AI services on tap and integrate that with the current applications to enhance them. So this may sound a bit scary. The way you cope with this, okay, so before we move that, this is just one example. Since we are newly AWS MSP, just a little ad for Amazon. Amazon have just launched a service called Amazon Forecast. It's based on all the business logic you will find in Amazon.com, the bookstore, and they've wrapped all that intelligence into one package. So what you do, you throw your data at it, and you will get the most insane forecast you've ever seen. That's at least what they're saying. And this can replace a lot of reporting service that you either have under your desk or in your data center or traditional reporting services. You can cut the cost, you can get better forecasts, and you can get closer to the customer or whatever you want to use this forecast for. So just an example that AI is going to be available as PaaS and SaaS services. And we also have SageMaker, which we use to train machine learning model, also coming in from Amazon. And there are many other tools than the ones you find in Amazon. So the way you work with this is that most companies we work with, they don't have all these competencies inside their company because they're fairly busy, right? And this is a new generation of services. So tap into the ecosystems, tap into the partners. What you will find there is some market insights. We have done this for other clients, and we're happy to share the insights. We're happy to share our failures, so you don't fail. And you'll also find that we'll have a lot of best practices and capabilities that can complement what you already have in your company, and then you move it forward. So typically what we do is that we enter this cross-functional team and we sit together with you and help you to move this project forward, help you to implement the use case, help you to operationalize it, and even help you to see if the business case is actually possible to operationalize in a proper way and cost-effective way. And then eventually, when you go live, we have all this service portfolio, so we can also keep your presence in the market whenever you have done your project, right? And also help you iterate. So this is not really IT, but many companies that do AI and do great ideas, they will find themselves in a situation where the current operating model is not actually ready for the effect of AI. So again, if your business idea is to provide the most nutrient food in the world, and you start putting insects on it, you have to ask yourself, is my current operating model okay for this? Is it ready for it? Do I have to change any way I do my business? It can be a branding thing. It can be people you employ. It can be pricing models. It can be a lot of different things. And the same go if you're doing self-driving vehicles. I mean, you don't need the same type of governance anymore. However, if your artificial intelligence engine do something wrong and you go to court and you have to explain that in the court, because that's what you do in a court, how do you explain which logic was behind the decision that AI took in order to take right? So there's a lot of things. This is very, it can impact your business. So you will need to get ready to actually possibly spin out a different domain operating model in order to handle this effect. That's at least what other companies have done. And then you can industrialize, scale, operate, and optimize, and iterate. So whenever you've done this project, it's not really a project, it's a whole new movement. So there's a lot of new things coming into the market on AI and big data in the coming years. And the more we use big data and AI, we're going to see AI PaaS services. And some of those services are going to be great, others are going to be not so great. And you will need the competencies to sort that out. We're also moving into this area of explainable AI, where you actually have to explain the logic behind the AI when something went wrong, which also moves us into AI governance, and again, monitoring what is actually happening on data layer. We're also moving AI into edge devices, which is also going to bring another governance field. So there's a lot of things happening in this area, and whenever you launch a product, make sure you iterate it to stay in the game and to stay really on the top of this, because it's a lot of movement and it's one of the fastest growing areas in the industry. So I would like to share with you very quick 3 ways that we engage with customers. One being that you want to automate a manual business process. We have a very consultative approach on that. So we sit with you, we sit with the C-level, the architect, the infrastructure people to see, is this possible? Is this possible to do cheap enough? Is it going to really be a game changer for you? What does the operating model look like? And usually we will set out to do a proof of value project and then make a minimal viable product and then operationalize it. Like, for instance, we did for Avinor. We have another version as well, which is more full-scale data-driven business model, which is, I would say, is closer to BMW. And this is where we work with you on the business cases, we work with you on the MVPs, we operationalize, and it's just shifting your whole company, or you're definitely spinning up a new division that is going to penetrate a very different market and new generation of customer. And it's rather radical. It can even be an own division in your current company or even a new company, and we can help you with that. And then for customers that are fairly mature already, that is looking into explainable AI and to really be much more mature on data consumers and data providers, we can help you with a self-service big data platform, and it will improve the management of data so you can work more efficiently in your current big data strategy. So we have something for beginners, we have something for those who want to transform, and we have also something for those who want to disrupt others. And if you look at it a bit like top down, you most likely have your digital strategy today, and you're defining some things under that where you say, you know, I have to optimize, you have to enhance my current portfolio, I have to transform, and maybe I also have to work with different sets of partners to actually reach that goals. And that's exactly the journey that we want to help you with. That's what we do. We try to align your big data and AI journey so you can reach the goals and vision in your digital strategy. So first of all, you will work with very happy people. So this is just a picture of me with two of the guys in our big data and AI team. It should be fun to work with data, and we're quite passionate about it. So we have the full scale of services all the way from the endpoint and all the way into actually visualizing. So we can help you to collect the data, we can help you to transport it, we can help you to store and process it in your cloud or our cloud or a hyperscaler or whatever. Definitely do the AI part, do that properly, management part, and we also have our workplace services, workspace, where we can even help you to visualize it, and all supported by the compliance and governance you need for your business. And this is the service portfolio. Only one slide. Big data requires some infrastructure to run on, so we have been in that industry for 20 years. So we do all sorts of managed services using hyperscalers, data centers, and you can even implement this in your own data centers or with your across in a hybrid model, multi-cloud model. We can do all the management on the top of this, and definitely bring the use case together and help you to implement your machine learning and AI solution. And if you require some business consulting and see which of these business cases are actually possible to operationalize, we can also help you with that. And hopefully we can help you to increase your efficiency. We can help you to grow new revenue or even refuel your brand. And for some customers, we also create a new market. We help them to create a new market. So this was the first of a webinar series. The next one is going to go a bit more technical. I hope this was of interest for you. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, please feel free to follow up with me or the leader of our big data division, Knut. Soon have a good weekend. Thank you.